Inflation has driven consumer confidence to near crisis level lows as higher prices across the board lead Canadian households to buckle financially as things get worse. That's according to a new Bloomberg Nanos study, and we're going to talk about all the details after the intro. The definitive guide on how to manage your credit, product, penalty, price in that order. It's never been more important to get your mortgage right. All right, so welcome back. According to the Bloomberg Nanos Consumer Confidence Index, consumer confidence has now reached crisis-era levels, which means that consumer confidence is now back to levels not seen since early on in the pandemic. You know, those first 3 months where everybody was terrified, that's where we're at right now. But before we get into all the details, do me that favor, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, and please hit that like button so more people like you can see this video. And don't forget, we've got 3 days left to enter into the $5,000 giveaway. All you have to do to enter is be subscribed to this channel and go to 360giveaway.ca in order to enter officially. You get an extra entry as well if you follow me on Instagram and if you share the contest socially. Okay, so the Bloomberg Nanos Consumer Confidence Index is basically a poll where they poll 250 Canadians on a 4-week rolling basis, which means at any given time, 1,000 Canadians are included in the survey. And the Consumer Confidence Index has dropped to below 50. It is now 48.3. The only other 2 times where consumer confidence has been this low in Canada in recent memory was during those early days of the pandemic and in the 2008-2009 financial crisis, which means consumers are expecting things to get significantly worse before they get better. And in yesterday's video, we talked about whether or not we were in a recession. I believe personally that we are already in a recession, even though the official numbers have not indicated that. But if you look at everything that's happening in the economy, which includes capital drying out, businesses no longer spending as much money as they previously have, tech companies starting to do layoffs, and the collapse in the real estate market, well, consumer confidence is usually the last domino that drops when things get bad in an economy. And that is pretty much a sign that we are headed for a recession. It's also a sign that the increase in interest rates that the Bank of Canada has put in place are having the effect that they hoped for, which was a greater slowdown in the economy. Now, while only 9% of people are suggesting that they are fearful of losing their jobs, the inflation numbers and the higher prices of everything are leading Canadians to be worried. And this is clearly a direct result of inflation and the higher prices across the board on pretty much everything. Because when you look at inflation over the last 2 years, we've had 7% inflation in May. We've had 3%, 4% the year prior to that. Prices on pretty much everything have gone up in the last 2 years by 10 to 15% at minimum. Now, with only 9% of people worried about a job loss in Canada, which is a really, really, really low number, what that tells us is that most Canadians are mostly concerned with rising prices and rising interest rates, which is a good sign because the Bank of Canada has been increasing interest rates with the hopes of decreasing the amount of demand in the economy, which will hopefully lower prices for certain goods. Even though we're still facing this scenario where we have prices of goods that are priced significantly higher than they should be because of global economic forces rather than local economic forces. But the main thing is that the Canadian real estate market is adjusting to the new interest rates, which should have an overall positive effect if lower inflation is in your mind considered a positive on the overall economy. So even though the fears of job losses aren't there, which they are coming, this is going to happen. There will be a point in time where Canadian companies are going to have to do layoffs as they turn towards profitability in the face of higher interest rates and less available capital. It is the erosion of the value of the dollar that is having many Canadians start to fear what's about to happen in the economy and have that lower level of consumer confidence. And by the way, 29% of Canadians now believe that house prices a year from now will not be what they are right now, which means more than likely we are going to continue to see a downturn in the real estate market because a downturn in the real estate market typically has a lot to do with consumer sentiment and how people are feeling. One thing that you need to keep in mind though is that it's the sellers that need to start believing that housing prices are going to go down before they do go down significantly. Because if sellers as a whole just generally don't believe that housing prices have gone down, they will tend to hold onto properties longer and not sell them for lower prices, which is what we call the lock-in effect. And that could lead housing prices to stay a little bit higher than they should for longer. And by the way, real estate is typically the last piece of the economy that shows signs of a recession. Consumer confidence, though, is typically the second last. And if we are here, it typically means we are heading towards less spending, which means hopefully lower prices on goods and less overall profits for companies, which at the end of the day is going to have a pretty big effect on jobs and so on and so forth. So Whether we hit a soft landing with this recession or we end up in a full recession is yet to be seen, but I can pretty much guarantee you that we are already there. I'll link to the video where we talk about that right here. Oh, and by the way, what's the number one thing that you can do to make sure that your confidence remains high and that you're able to sleep at night when the economy is essentially in a dumpster fire? Well, it's simply this. Stop watching the news, pay attention to your own finances, stop watching channels like mine, I'm going to be honest and say this is probably not the place you want to be if you want to be able to sleep at night with respect to what's happening in the economy. And just go about your everyday business and make sure that you are keeping as much money as you possibly can and not giving it to the businesses and the tax man and the banks in the form of interest, if at all possible. And if you found this video useful, do me that favor, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell. Please hit that like button so more people like you can see this video, and we'll see you on the very next one. Cheers.